Hello, everyone. Welcome back. It's been a little while. So, today I'm very excited. I have a very, very dear, special soul sister of mine. I have Kathy from the Blue Butterfly. Thank you, Kathy, for being here. This is the first time that we get to collaborate and have
Yeah,
a cosmic
thank
conversation.
you.
So, welcome.
I'm very, very, very excited. Thank you very much.
And so I guess just a bit of backstory about how all this came back. Obviously, I've known Kathy for some time, and I think it was about a week ago you sent me a message saying,
Yeah.
talking about different topics. And all of a sudden I was like, well, let's do a conversation. Let's do a bit of a cosmic conversation and bring those topics to light. And I think it's really good timing because obviously it's been a bit of a less productive time when it comes to putting out content and videos and things like that. And
Yeah.
for me personally, I want to be able to shift the narrative a little bit in terms of there's so much going on in the world. And I think if anyone's like me, so sick of hearing certain words about, we won't mention them here. And it was like, let's shift the narrative. Let's have an hour conversation about something that's an uplifting topic that might be educational for some, it might be informative, it might be funny, So thank you for sort of heeding the call without even knowing and bringing us to this
Kind
place.
of, it came out of the blue, really, well, in a way, because I have ladies that subscribe to me monthly, who I do readings for. And one of them, she sent me a message, and she said, "You keep mentioning the spirit team, and you keep mentioning certain words, specifically spirit team." She said, "I'm really glad that they're helping me, but what are they?" And I thought, I'm banging on and using all these phrases, and 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I wouldn't have known. And then I thought, well, and I did explain it a bit, and I thought, you know what, Alisha, I've heard Alisha explain all about the soul contract and the spirit team, and I thought, obviously she is the lady. So that's when I messaged you, and I said, I'm thinking about doing it, etc., etc. And he's like, "Oh, do it together. Yeah, let's do it."
Hopefully one
As
of
it was.
many cool conversations that we can
Yeah.
have. But so obviously this conversation, we're going to be talking about spirit team and all the different facets, and hopefully share some stories and relatable content, and also talking a little bit about soul contracts as well. So but before we get into it, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit? I'm sure most of the people watching and most of viewers know who you are. I mean, you have a beautiful, great presence with the Blue Butterfly on social media. I'm so grateful for the work that you do. But if you just want to share with people who may not be as familiar, where you're located and a little bit about yourself.
I will. Well, first of all, I'll just say that when my journey began, I was floundering a little bit, because I went through the phase where I did think, yeah, I'm completely going down the rabbit hole here, and that's how I met Alisha. So I wanted to just say that first, because I found one of Alisha's posts online and I started reading it, and I thought, oh my God, I've been feeling all this stuff, and she doesn't sound as if she's that mental. So that's a good thing. So that's how we met. That's how I met you. I'm in Cornwall, deepest Cornwall, very beautiful. I'm very lucky to live here. And I used to have a corporate job, made very steady money, etc., etc. From a small child, I've had I used to call them knowings when I was little. And I told people a few things, and then you're treated as if you're a bit crazy. I've always known, so I didn't say any more. So my granddad turned up at the end of my bed when I was 8, and he'd actually died that night and I didn't know, that kind of thing. So I've always been what I would call slightly different, and you learn after a while to kind of close that off if you're not in a family that supports that, and there's no judgment there, because not many are. As time went on, I had different experiences, went on with life. Always there was something, and I'd had certain different spiritual experiences which I didn't really understand. And then fast forward to a few years ago, and doing this job that I don't like. I know there is something more. And I kind of started to notice there were some strange things going on, and I started to tune into them. And then from then on, I'm not going to go too much into it because it'll be a whole video. I left my corporate job and I started the Blue Butterfly. And this started with crystal healing, Reiki Seiken. And then I started doing some card readings because when I was younger, I found it quite easy. And I remember watching a video thinking, right, if I need to make some more money, so I'm going to add to my crystal healing and my Reiki, so I need to do this. And I watched all these videos about doing these spreads and everything, and I'm trying to do it, and I'm thinking, I haven't got a clue, this doesn't feel right. So my cards started jumping all over the place. And then when I went with it one day and did a reading like that, it just felt 100% right. And then from then on, it was like, fast forward. And in between all that, I met my guides gradually as the time's gone on. And I got into that sounds like getting into drugs or something. I found energy healing. I knew that the Reiki Seiken I was doing had an extra bit to it, and people often said they felt it was slightly different. Around that time, I was reading more and more about Alisha, learning about energy healing. I did a course with Alisha, which opened things up, and my next step, which I've just recently found, is the blue flame. And the blue flame is something that has always been part of me. I didn't know. I've come across it now, and it is the most marvelous energy healing tool. And that's opened me up even more, and I've even met a few more of my guides recently. And so I work from here. I offer hands-on treatments when I can, obviously not at the moment, and I also do a lot of video interactive meditations with card readings, and it's all intuitive guidance, and now the energy healing as well. So from 3 years ago to where I am now, I am totally amazed. I never used to be able to say this about myself, but I'm totally proud of myself. And I'm like sitting here talking to you.
And I just think that, thank you so much for sharing that, because I think it's so beautiful and inspirational that you can share that story about how you went from corporate and how bit by bit how things sort of unfolded and blossomed and where you are now, and in that rather short period of time. And so I hope that gives a spark of inspiration to other people who may be, on the precipice, because I know that we all start somewhere. And my background was also very much in corporate, and taking that jump is not an easy one, and I really take my hat off to people who do follow.
Me too. I completely understand. There are massive leaps that we make in life as we come back to our true selves, and they are scary because they go against everything you've been brought up to believe, and what is safe and what isn't. When I was leaving, I remember my boss saying to me, "So have you got a job to go to?" I sat there and I went, "No, but I really don't want to be here doing this with you guys anymore, because this is just not me, and I don't even like being," I did actually say, "I don't even like being around you guys anymore because it's affecting my energy." And as soon as I said that, you could see it's like, it wasn't nasty, it was just like, I'm off. I said, I'm going to start my healing business, but it is very scary. It's a massive leap. Massive. So I admire anybody.
And I think, one thing that comes to mind as you were saying that is that, we can hold it off. And I know I held mine off for years. I mean, people that may not know that about me, I have been doing this work, not just recently, I've been doing this work on and off in, I have my corporate job and then do this work on the side, since I was about 23. So that's over it's about 15 years ago, so it's been this back and forth. But I guess we have all those limitations, and we have those programs that think, oh, I can't make a living from that, or that's not you know, that's good part-time or that's good as a hobby. But I think we're at that precipice now where no, we need people who have these abilities to be able to stand in to assist, because obviously, and we're not going to go there. I said I'm not going to talk about current energetic climates, but you know, the Great Awakening is here. So, and I think a big part of doing these videos and a big part of my work is I really want to be able to help to normalize spiritual experiences, so that
Exactly.
that everyday normal people are having them, because we all have them. And the more you get to speak to people one-on-one, or at least what I found, you know, you talk to people one-on-one, and
Yeah.
if you're open and sharing, everyone has a story, you know, everyone has had an experience, but quite
Yes.
often it's something that they've parked away or pushed away for whatever reason, and that's okay. So it's nice to have
Well, I
the
did it. I did it for years. There's loads of things that happened to me that I didn't. And if I did tell people, you get the sort of like, oh, okay, response. So I think that's the end of that conversation then. You're gonna may not see them for a little while. Yeah, so I get that. And I think as well, I'm just gonna mention this very quickly because this is just a sideline, it's just something that's come into my head, so I obviously need to say it. There is some kind of, I get it, you must get it as well, with clients and people saying, how do you do what you do? And how are you so good at it? And I'm not very good at it. And all this, everybody has this.
yes, yeah,
Nobody is better, nobody is worse. We're just helping each other along and we're all doing it differently. I think I was fast tracked. One, because I'm 53 now and, you know, got to get on with it. And secondly, because I think I needed to get the word out there that,
yeah,
look at me.
yeah,
This is Kathy. You've known me all my life. And this has happened because it's always been in there. So it's, if it's in me, it's in you. With me, I've only recently, although I've been doing this for a while, found that my major purpose, I think, with the readings and the guidance, I love that. And that is obviously one, and my writings on Blue Butterfly. But the Blue Flame, it's, you know, it is so much a part of me and it's always been there. And it's kind of like, oh, hello. You know, so everybody has these different ways that we can all help each other. And it is
yeah,
just coming back to yourself.
yes.
Nobody's better, nobody's worse, nobody's ahead, nobody's behind.
Yeah.
That's really important.
100%. I've said that, you know, from day dot, you know, I've always said anyone can do what I do, but in their own individual, unique way, of course, because we are all, you know, wired a little bit differently. But, you know, it takes the will, the desire. I guess we can get into soul contracts too. You know, I think that there is you know, there may be a little bit of leverage room, but then if you get to a certain tipping point, if you haven't really full on jumped in, it's like, no, now, and they're the people that tend to get fast tracked. And yeah, I'm certainly in that category too. And you know, the dedication, you know, it does take a lot of going within and dedication to doing own personal work as well, you know.
Yes.
And
And that's
so
not an easy bit. That's not the easy bit. We do get some great bits, like we were talking about the fact that I feel like I look a lot younger than I did when I was
yeah.
like 2 years ago, 4 years ago. In fact, I would never sit here without hardly any makeup on because I had no self-worth particularly. People that knew me probably thought I did, and I did to a certain degree, in that I would always stand up for myself. But my self-esteem was like down there somewhere. Now I'm sitting here with plaits.
And they look
Hardly
great, by
any
the way.
makeup on. Thank you. Yapping away, you know? So that's the good bit. But there are the tough bits to get to it's like anything in life, isn't it? And then they become almost like eureka moments when you go through those dark night of the soul sections. When you go through those bits and you come out, it is like oh, it's like you're remembering because you've shed something else that just wasn't part of your vibration. It was hiding the real you.
100%, 100%. Each time we go through those dips, you know,
Yeah.
it's like shedding a layer of skin, and even though it's uncomfortable and it's not the fun part of the process, the the after result is that we reclaim more of our, we shed a layer of our humanness, in our fears and our programming and our conditioning, and we step more into the soul, and with that comes more remembrance of these ways that we can express that in however form that is, whether it's healing or guidance or and more of that comes in, which is beautiful. It's absolutely stunning.
I always call it the beautiful alchemy, because it is, because when you have alchemy as well, there are some dark and some bad and it's a mixture, and that's what an alchemy is, and it has to work against each other in a certain way to make a beautiful diamond, I suppose, at the end of it. But to get to those, those precious stones, you've got to go through this process. And when you look back at it, there is a bit of like, God, I wish I'd got that earlier. I wish I'd stopped reacting like that then. Duh. And talking about spirit guides and stuff, one of mine, which I'm sure do you want to get into that?
Let's get into that. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Do you want to kick us off and talk about your definition, your understanding and experiences of your spirit team and how that looks?
Yeah. Okay, so I'll just give a couple of instances. One of my guys, where is he? There he is. When I first started meditating, so I've got exhibit A and everything. When I first started meditating, I didn't really know what I was doing, but this is about 3.5 years ago, I suppose. But I knew that I needed to do it because I tried it once at a place I went to. A lady was organising something, and I thought, this has really helped me. I need to get into this. Nothing resonated very much online, and they kept telling me I was going to walk up a staircase and meet somebody and they would take me off and do something, and I'm like, yeah, that ain't happening. I'm not seeing any of that. I'm seeing light, and I'm seeing, I want to go this way. I don't want to. So some guided meditations were very helpful, like chakra balancing and stuff like that. Anyway, every time I did a meditation, or almost every time, I would start seeing this guy, and he would be, because I thought spirit guide's going to be like something turns up, and you are a wonderful child of light, and all that sort of stuff, and I shall lead you, and I'm this beautiful angel. Anyway, this guy sitting there, just a turban and a sort of like, I don't know, loincloth thing. His turban was a little bit messy, really, and I just thought, he kept sitting there and he kept going like this to me, like somewhere in the meditation, as I was coming out, as I was going in, or during, and sometimes he'd walk with me. And I thought, I don't know who this guy is, and I'm asking, who are you? And he's like this all the time, and looks a bit, to be honest, he looks a bit antsy. So anyway, fast forward to when I decided that I was going to start doing the cards as a paid service. Ordered my first box of cards for years, and it was, I mean, I love Kyle Gray anyway, but it was this one, Kyle Gray's Keepers of the Light. Finished the meditation, this guy turns up with his turban and everything, and I hear, open the box. And I've just got this box of cards, so I think, well, maybe it's referring to that. I haven't even unsealed it. I open the box, and it's ascended masters, and it's deities, light workers, etc., star ancestors, all sorts of things, right? So the first card, as I open the box, is he almost fell out of the box, and this is El Maria, who I know now is part of the Blu-ray. He is also, which is me, which I didn't know, and I know now that all this sort of stuff is like, you know all this, but I can't do it for you. I'm here, I'm walking with you. And he was walking with me. He never really said very much, and he did seem quite impatient and quite strict. And this wasn't the archetypal, beautiful golden angel that I'd seen in all these films when I was a kid. And El Maria is with me all the time now. He still is quite strict, and he's very hot on being devoted to service and being committed. But he's also very supportive, and he works very closely with me. Segue into another one, is Archangel Michael. When I was going through leaving my job and I had a breakdown because of the scare, the fear of everything, and everything just being so much, I didn't know where to go next. I'm in the shower, and I'm going to be very honest and very raw with this. I'm actually sat in the bottom of the shower. I think we've all been there, crying, thinking, I'm pathetic and I can't do this, I don't know what to do, and all the rest of it. I'm missing something. And I remember there was a rose quartz in the bathroom on the ledge, and I picked this rose quartz up. And I'm thinking, this is all about self-esteem. Maybe it's something to do with that. And then as I closed my eyes, I was doing like a shower meditation, I didn't know something wasn't right. I just heard Archangel Michael, and I didn't know who he was. I just heard this, like, I can't remember exactly what he said, which sounds really disrespectful now, but it was something like, you need to love yourself as much as you are loved, or words to that effect. And I was, oh my God. And he told me then, you deserve. I remember those words very clearly, you deserve. And I'm like, that was, for me personally, that was a massive breakthrough. Yeah. I deserve. So that's how he turned up. And then others have along the ways, like Mary Magdalene, who's beside me. And so they've kind of shown up at different times as I've gone along. It's not all been in one go. And also, I don't think necessarily you can kind of sit there and go, right, okay, can you all turn up now, because I need a little bit of a list of what I need to do. I don't know who you are. Doesn't work like that, does it?
Right. And I love that, that they tend to, at least in my own experience, have appeared at times of distress or needing comfort. That's where we may have these super heightened experience and connections. It's seems to be not always, but that tends to be, they come in at that time to give a message of comfort or peace, just to help us along the way. So obviously, going into the term spirit team, I don't know if you have a specific definition of what that means to you, but I think I'll let you pause and think about it, but to me, I think as you go along your own individual pathway, I think there's many layers of that, at least from my own experience. And that different energies, so non-physical form, so just as we would have friends or family members or partners show up in our life to help us through certain pathways, predicaments, challenges, obstacles, passageways, that's the word I'm looking for, passageways. We also have non-physical beings that help support us through that may have more experience or more insight or awareness than someone who's in a physical body.
Like El Maria, he's one of the, if people don't understand this term, I'm sure we get into this a bit later, but he's an ascended master. Mm-hmm. So he was helping me on my ascension because he's chosen to stay around and help those who need particular help. And his energy signature and mine are very similar. Mm-hmm. And so before I even got here, he chose to be one of those that helped me. Mm-hmm. And he came in at the right time, although he's always been around.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. 100%. And so I do think that we do have different guides that will be lifelong buddies and support team, and then there'll be other energies that come in and out for various points, specific points, and it will be a matter of their own experience and expertise. Obviously, as an ascended master is someone who has gone through their ascension process, and so obviously now at this time, as the Earth's going through her ascension process, and every being on this planet is part of that, the presence of ascended masters will be very prevalent, as well as other beings as well, and we can go into the different types. I know I'm trying to think back to like some of my very, very first experiences, because I think the way that I operate now is my connection to my higher self. And yes, there will be other beings that will come in, but that I'm more sort of higher self focused.
Yeah.
As I've gone along, but doesn't take away from the really profound experiences that I've had, probably going as far back as I can remember. I think I was around 8 or 9, and for my birthday, my parents bought me a spirit guide drawing and reading, and it was from a very, very talented woman who has since left this earthly plane, but her drawings were absolutely astounding, and she was very well known for that type of work. And I went there. It was probably one of the greatest childhood memories that I have. And she did.
Wonderful gift.
Oh,
Wonderful gift.
it was phenomenal. I still have that artwork. It was beautiful, and it was his name. It was a drawing of a Chinese man, and his name was Ling Haiso, and he was my healing guide. And I was told through that reading that he was around me from the time that I was born, and that he would be with me until approximately the age of 27, and then he would leave and someone else would come in and take place, because that was the sole contract that we'd had. Yeah. And I look, in the room that I work in, there's a few spirit guide drawings in there. There's influences of all, angels, galactics, indigenous. I sort of take inspiration and fusion from all, but I have a few spirit guide drawings of my dad's, actually. And I love this one particular image of a Native American Indian who he had done by the same artist. And the reading that he got was that this spirit guide was a brother of his in a past life, when my dad had a lifetime as a Native American Indian. And so that energy of that soul, who was his brother in physical incarnate, has chosen not to this time around, but he's on the other side, guiding and supporting him. And so my dad had always had this real strong connection to indigenous, like Native American Indian, and no doubt because of that past life resonance, but also that guide that was around him too. And I always laugh because it's funny, because I look at that image and I see my uncle, and it really looks like my uncle in this incarnation. It's a real trip. So
that's brilliant though, isn't it? That's just I had just reminded me, actually. I remember last week I messaged you because I woke up and this woman's name was in my head. And I'm not going to say her name. I've just been told not to say her name, so I'm not going to say her name. But she was not a famous Ziegfeld Follies actress. I have a bit of an aversion to, a bit of a phobia to black and white musicals, and also the ones with the comedians and Laurel and Hardy and all that. I have a bit of a thing. I don't like them. Anyway, she was in those big musicals from the 30s, and this name came up, and I thought, as I woke up, she came into my head, this name, look it up. So I looked it up, and this woman popped up, and I thought, God, she looks a lot like me. And then I started looking into it, but she died in 1981. I was born in 1967. And I just know now, because I was meditating and I was asking, like, who is she and what? And again, I was told you have the same vibration. And so we were together in a past life, and she has decided to, I feel like it's all very new for me, this one, so I'm not 100% sure. Feels like a sisterly sort of thing, and she's now stepped in to be with me at this time. Her choice. And that's why I woke up and I saw this woman, and I was like, that's her. How do I know her? And then, but now I know, if you don't know if you agree with me as well, Alisha, I mean, you're quite lucky in a way, because you've obviously come through in a family that have supported this, and there's been no big sort of like dramas when you have seen or experienced stuff. You've had loving support. I think, like, when I started, like, when he first turned up, and Archangel, for me it was like a massive, oh God, what's going on? But now when it happens, like the thing with this lady, when she came through, and I started, I knew. It's like anything, you stop being scared of it and just accept it, and the more you accept, the more you get to know your spirit team.
Yeah, yeah. That I think that's really good insight for most things when it comes to the nature of these topics. The more fear we have around it, the more we can push it away in a sense. But it's really about, and I think the more experience that we have in embracing it, the more we'll come through and step through. Yeah, definitely, definitely.
So what is your I've heard you explain this before, and I just love the way you do it. The soul contract. Could you put your explanation of what that is? Because I like the way you say it and the way you went about it.
Sure. I don't even know. I'm like, oh, do I know how to feel about that? Here we go. Sorry if it's not the same one you recall. Soul
Probably somebody else.
could
That
it
would
be?
be funny.
I mean, soul contracts. Soul contracts are, part of what we've written before this incarnation. So we can have soul contracts with different people, with different places, with different locations. And if you think about it, it's the contract. Contracts is a bit of a hard term, but it's the essence of what we scribe to for what we're going to fulfill in this lifetime before we come into the physical body. So we set out certain agreements. So whether it's to play out karmic contracts, that's a very common term that's thrown around, but obviously karma is, when you experience something and then having the reverse experience. So karmic contracts can come into play to give us the opportunity to balance them out. And I think about I always used to come back to a story of an author of a book that I used to love reading. I used to read anything and everything on soul contracts, and I love this topic because everything sort of comes in so nicely and neatly. But the story that comes to mind that I always used to explain to clients was that there was this guy, I think he's a psychic that lives in Australia, but he experienced some abuse as a child in the hands of 3 individuals, which was quite traumatic. And he, obviously grew up trying to heal that, and got and went through a spiritual awakening, but still held a lot of anger towards and resentment towards the abuse that he had received as a child to these perpetrators, to the extent that he actually tracked them down with the intent to impose harm. I'll just say that. I won't go into the full details of it, because he held
Which,
such...
to be honest, is quite understandable.
Absolutely, and it was very brutal, and obviously people want to seek justice for that. And that's understandable. And so he had kind of plotted this, tracked this person down, the main perpetrator, gone there with, ill intent to cause harm, got there and had this moment where this past life memory came back at that point in time where he could have made a choice to create harm and perpetuate the karmic contract, right? Because karma doesn't stop in one lifetime. It goes on until it reaches its balance. And in that moment, he was given, I guess, what you could call a download of the past life that he'd had, and he actually had killed that man in a past life. And so the karma that was to play out was part of his experience to go through that and transcend that in love and forgiveness. So he had a choice point at that point in time. If he'd then inflicted harm, then they would have come back and done it all again. So the karmic contracts that we have are to bring things into balance. Whereas, when we have something that's done to us that may hold what you can call like a victim mentality, or something that we've experienced that's been quite traumatic to us, I think we always have the choice to either retaliate or heal it with love. So I guess that's one example of like a karmic contract. So we have a lot of different contracts that play out, and I think, of course, when we're at this critical time in Earth's process, we want to be able to be clearing as much of those those agreements, let's call them agreements, as possible, because let's face it, a lot of us, this is our last lifetime here on this planet, and we don't want
Yeah.
to have those ties to be coming back and relearning those lessons. So that's why things are so fast tracked and so intense and so accelerated, so that we can go through and clear a lot of that, those experiences. So, you know, that's one side of soul contracts. I guess another one that comes to mind for me is, as light workers, as star seeds, as people who hold a higher vibration, who volunteer to come here, you know, we also have a soul contract with Gaia, as our very
Yeah.
essence of why we came here. And a lot of people talk about, you know, soul purpose, and that's a big topic, of course, and everyone wants to be able to fulfill that. And that is part of the soul contract. You know, it's what we've come here to fulfill as souls.
Yes. And
And
it doesn't have to be, as the world now would see it, something that makes you like really well known or whatever. Your soul purpose
no,
can be so amazingly important, but very low key.
yes, yeah, absolutely. And I think
Lovely.
first and foremost is the energy and the vibration that we bring to this planet to help it shift into a fifth
Exactly.
dimensional consciousness.
Yeah.
That takes precedent over anything else that we can do in physical form, in my opinion. And I go back to 2016 for me, which was very, very hard and challenging year and transition year. And I was very, in my humanness, I was very frustrated at my inability to move. I was at a place, at a location, living, and I felt like I literally couldn't move from that location. And I remember sitting and doing a meditation, and I connected in with Gaia, and I asked, like, why am I here? Why can't I move from this geographical location?
Why am I stuck?
Why am I stuck? Yeah, why am I stuck here? Basically, I want to be able to move from this place. And it came back very, very clearly. She said, this is part of your soul agreement that you have with me, because you were transmuting energy from this place and bringing in light. And she said, when that contract is up, you'll be able to move again. And I said, well, can you give me some can you give me something? She gave me a date, and she said, the next part of your contract, of your mission, will be on this date. And she said, at that point, we want you to travel, and we want you to travel up north, and we want you to be able to see the light up the coast of Australia. So it's about a 20-hour drive. And I was given very specific grid points that I was to go and do sort of energetic ritual and ceremony. And at that time, I was like, how on earth is this going to be possible? Because I had $0. I was barely able to cover rent, let alone food. And I thought, how on earth am I going to do this trip that's going to take me about a month to go and see the light? And I am 100% for service in humanity. But I was like, I don't know from a tangible way how on earth I'm going to do this.
How I'm going to do it. Yeah.
But I was told to pack my stuff and get prepared and get ready for that day. And sure enough, no more than 2 days, I had a very small inheritance come through to me. And it gave me enough money to be able to go and fulfill that mission. So, you know, that's just one example and story. And I think so many of us do have those agreements and contracts in terms of our geographical location, as well as, you know, with people and experiences. So soul contract is quite broad, but in essence, to break it down, it's the written agreement that we wrote for ourselves of what we,
that is the thing, you see. Once you get that, you kind of, I know you still feel it because you're human. You can't really have that victim mentality that we all have, and we still get it. I mean, I do still. And you can't really be annoyed that you were living with so and so in whatever year, and they did something that was really bad, because you kind of agreed for all that to happen for the growth of your soul.
Yeah.
So that you can ascend. So you agreed, and that now when you first get that, I remember sitting there one day getting that, and it just kept going round and round in my head, and I'm like, okay, once you get it, it's like anything, it's fine. But yeah, and also I think talking about ascension, just sidelining slightly, but it is still part of the soul contract, is past lives.
Mm-hmm.
Like you were saying, things that have come up in the past that you haven't quite put to bed yet, or that you missed out on, or there are no, I don't believe in wrongs and rights and mistakes and all that sort of stuff. But that particular time you took that path, and what you need to do now is find the way and have the trust and the belief and the healing to take that path, because that path's just going to go on like that, which is fine, whereas that path is going to go up. Yes, you're just going to keep going and you want to go up, not a bit, and then maybe down a bit.
Yeah, and I think that's what it comes down to, is we want to stop perpetuating the cycles. And I think for a lot of people, we don't have a choice anymore. Those karmic resolutions sort of are almost forced into play, whether it's clearing up karma with certain relationships and individuals, or experiences or lessons, or playing out the rights and wrongs of the injustice that we've caused in past lives, and going through an experience to have the flip side of that. And it really is just about being able to experience every aspect, and when you can see it from that, there is no right or wrong. Everything comes down to it, just experiences. And as a soul that is connected to source, connected to creation, that's what we're being, I can't even remember where this theory or this story, but it's flown into my head about, source, God, creation, whatever you want to call it, universe, is and wants to experience every possible experience. So in its entirety couldn't do that, and that's why it sent forth souls to go and have those experiences, to be able to give it back, so that everything could be accumulated in its entirety. And I think that's one thing, when we go through certain circumstances and we hold it in our body, it's like giving it back, transmuting it and handing it back over. That was an experience, not to be held on to. It's to be, sure, embodied and learnt from and gain the wisdom, but holding on to the actual trauma of the experience, hand it over. So
that's kind of like you were saying about the forgiveness, because if you don't forgive, you are holding on, and that can have so many different ramifications. I know I did it. I know I had the victim mentality, and why is all this happening to me, and you did something bad to me, and you did it, and you did. And then I look, and now I see, once I started learning the lessons, all those people, all those things were strategically put into place for me to learn.
Yeah.
And once you realize that, it becomes almost like, I don't play computer games, but it's almost like it's like levels, I suppose.
Yeah.
We talk about levels.
It's a great analogy, because it really is. We move through into, we pass the tests, and we move up into the next experience, the next level.
Because it reminds me of like shouting for my son when he was living at home when he was a teenager, and it would be, I'd say, Dave, dinner's going to be on the table. Yeah, but I can't come down until I've finished this level. And I'm like, well, why? No, Mum, I can't. At this point, I cannot leave this game until I've finished this level. Then I'll come down and eat. And that's quite a good example. I can't move from this place.
Yeah.
Until I finish this level. And it used to drive me crazy, but now that's a really good example. Yeah, it's a good analogy.
Yeah, interesting. I was having a very interesting conversation today with a friend of mine who's looking to sell her house and move. And, we were talking about that, and it made me reflect. And I thought, do you know what? Every house that I've lived in, well, not every, but most of the houses that I've lived in, there's 100% been a contract or an agreement there, because there was a lot of the houses that I've lived in have had people who have passed away, or there's been a lot of paranormal activity in the house. So I go in, of course, clean all that up and make it nice for the next people that will move in it.
There we go. See?
Yeah.
It's everywhere. Every step you take in life, something.
You know, and that's why, you know, that topic of sleep, it's so, you know, I think it's so, you know, I often see it that before we come into a lifetime, we sit down and we plan all this out, and we look at, you know, we take into consider the previous incarnations that we've had.
Yes.
And look at what has to be restored and balanced. So we plan these meetings, we plan these connections, we plan these relationships, and people to come in to give us those opportunities so that we can, you know, balance things out, bring things into resolution, learn from the experiences, and then from those experiences we can take that wisdom and share it with other people, whether it's through our profession or our practice, or whether it's just in an informal way. It doesn't matter. It's, you know, it's beautiful when
and one of the big things with the soul contract and the spirit team is the fact that you come back, and when you're first born, you're a baby, you remember a lot of stuff, and you see your spirit guides around you, and you are aware until you know, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, perhaps younger. And then it all sort of changes, and then you've got to go through this process of like you're unremembering, and then going through a certain part of your life, which can be like 5 years, 10 years for me, most of mine, and then remembering it, and every time you go through it, you look back, you get little prods and signals, and when you look back at it, you think, that's what that was. It's like I had a lady that when we used to live with my grandparents, because my mum was a single parent, and I was very close to my grandfather. He is actually one of my guides, and he was like such a wonderful man and such an impression on me. I used to go and see him in the greenhouse and in the shed in the garden, and I loved it. And he would tell me about all the plants and all the flowers, and make up stories about a little mouse that lived in the shed and all this. There was always a lady there, and she would just turn up, and she would be there. She had the most beautiful face, and she would just be level with me. And I remember she was always there from when like all my life, and I just assumed everybody could see her. And then one day I mentioned to my granddad, and I said, "Where's the lady?" And he said, "What lady?" I said, "The lady that's always in the garden, and the lady that's sometimes there when I wake up and when I go to bed and everything." And he said, "I don't know." I said, "What's her name?" I thought, I've never asked. Who is that woman that we're always with when I'm with you? And when, no idea. And then obviously gradually she just faded off.
and that's a great example, and so many stories. I'm sure everyone or most people would have a story from childhood of, you know, connecting with or having, you know, spirit influence around them,
or like imaginary friend.
Yes. So imaginary friends is a perfect example of what children who are, I guess, closer to the spirit world because they're newly entered into this physical 3D reality, still have those connections until obviously society or parents or family or whatever starts to change that or reshape that, which, you know, there's
and what's so sad in a way is, I know we have to remember, because we're in the world where we live in the civilization and the level that the world's at in its process, we have to kind of have forgotten and then remember again. I understand that, but it's such a shame because our ancestors and the ancients, they wouldn't question any of this stuff. It was just like, yeah, of course Jimmy down the road could see spirits. He's only 4, you know. Of course he can. We all did. Like it's the most normal thing in the world, and nobody would question it. Everybody was, like you're saying about Gaia and the connection that we all had to the earth and the sky, and our star ancestors, Egypt, for example. All those things we were just accepting, whereas we've been taught not to.
Yes. And I think
that's simple.
I think at this point it's really good to bring up, you know, for people who, I get that probably a lot of people who are watching this are probably very well equipped with connecting with their spirit guides, but I want to also speak to the people who may be new to all this too, you know. And I think at least from my own experience, I can notice different tiers of connection with different non-physical beings, guides and presence. And so obviously for me, it started off with spirit guides, who are people who maybe shared a past life with, previous incarnation with, a different team of mentors from, beings from Indigenous. A lot of them were, from Indigenous cultures and things like that.
Yes.
Another, is loved ones who've passed away,
Yes.
as you mentioned. And I know that there was a period of time for me when I think it was around 2013, 2012, 2013. Obviously a lot started to happen, and I had two family members who'd passed away who I was very, very close with, and I was urged to reconnect and go back into working in energy healing around that time. And what really strengthened that connection was those two family members who passed away, who would come through. It was like I would see a portal open in the room. They would come through. I would burst into tears because the energy that of where they were coming from was so overwhelmingly blissful and joyful that I would just drop a few tears.
Yeah.
And I remember my mum being in the room once, and it's so funny because the family members that passed away were my grandmother and my aunt on my father's side, and quite often it's so funny how they my dad would have like a physical injury or something that he was really concerned about. So it's like, okay, well, let's do some energy work and I'll see. And so I'll go into the session, and it was just, and then straight away they would come through and they wanted to deliver all this information and messages to my dad. And then the physical element would disappear, and it was purely because they wanted to convey the information that they would sort of hijack his.
I think that happens a lot. I think that happens a lot. I've had people here in this is my treatment room, and when this first started happening, when I first did my Reiki, I was just doing the Reiki and everything was fine. Then suddenly it all started kicking off, and I was working, and suddenly I saw this lady like this on the edge of the treatment bed, like this. And so the client's there, and she's just resting, looking at me and staring at this girl, and I just knew immediately it was her mother, and she had passed very recently. And she was just really giving me the evils, basically just telling me to look after her, and then all these messages start coming. So I think that, but yeah, she was quite scary because she was quite dominant. She was like, this is my girl, we've got to be looking after her. I want her to come back again, she needs this. Okay. Yeah, but I think that happens a lot.
It really does. And it's so funny because in my early days of studying, like I studied all lines of psychic development and esoterics and mediumship and things like that. And I personally would have always said that out of all those skills and abilities, I think that the one that sucked the most was my mediumship skills. Like I really didn't think that was something that was my path. And I struggled with that. And it's funny, as soon as I really dug deep into going into working in energy work and healing, whatever was necessary to come through for the client would come through. And I was all of a sudden surprised at how many deceased relatives would come through to pass on information. I was like, oh, my medium skills actually don't suck, but it's all relative to what's needed in that moment, and so that's what I'm with working with clients, is that if they have a connection to the angelic realm, I'll have a lot of angels come in. If a person's a real starseed, the galactic beings come through. If they don't have, and so I think that was the message I wanted to sort of get into. It's all going to be relative to, is it always going to be contextual to that person's experience and belief system, and that will then extend as they evolve. So it may start off as loved ones, and then spirit guides, and then it might transcend to angels, and then galactic. I know that was ascended masters sort of go in there as well, to kind of prepare us, because I know that for me, I work a lot with galactic beings. I work a lot with Arcturians, but it's always specific to the person that I'm working on at that time.
Yeah.
And I've seen phenomenal, amazing non-human beings that I couldn't even make up in my imagination, but it's connected to that person, right? So I think as we develop through our own consciousness, you know, that can then progress in our own experience too. So one sort of
Yeah.
backs off the other, and it evolves that way too.
I remember saying to you actually that I was getting a bit antsy because I've met spirit and it's wonderful to meet with these spirit guides, and I just said, I remember saying to you, I don't get the starseed thing. And you'd done a session with me and you said, well, you are. Like, you know, I was like, yeah, but I don't know which ones they are. And you said, well, they're blue and they're very ancient, but it's for you to find that out, because that's your, you know, when the right time, it will just happen. And then I had a session with lovely Joe Brooks for Awakening to the Light Within, and I went to Andromeda. And they helped me find the blue flame as well. So they've always been around me, and I did see a pink sort of long spaceship thing that followed me when I was about 7 or 8. I didn't know what it was. I was quite scared, and I knew that if I didn't get to where I was going, that they were going to take me somewhere. I could just feel it. And then when I got in the house and went to show where I got to my grandmother's, and everybody was looking up going, well, there's nothing there, and it wasn't. Seconds before there was. So there's always been that, and I'd forgotten a lot of that until I started connecting again. So like you say, it's all divine timing.
100%.
When you are ready.
100%. And I think that's very common what you shared, because I know as a child I had so many galactic experiences, you know, from the age of, as young as I can remember, probably around the time of 6 or 7. And then I sort of moved into more spirit and angelic kind of you know, reference, or more, it was probably more about spirits, working with spirits. And it wasn't until, you know, later in life when it was time, it was ready, that the whole galactic connection reconnected. And, you know, it startled me. And I remember in the early days, because I was having such way out experiences, but it was time. And I just went, this is not my realm. This is not my realm. I deal with spirit. I deal with ascended masters. I deal with angels, archangels. But what the hell are the, you know? And then you become more comfortable with it. So, you know, it's always about a warming up process, I guess.
And it's you know, you say about becoming more comfortable with it. So it is, you know, like people say to you, what I do get people say to me sometimes, so what would you call yourself then? Would you call yourself a healer or a medium? And what is your job? And so I don't mind those questions, because I would have asked the same a few years ago, somebody like me. And I just say, well, I just am. It's all part of me. It's not just my job. It's my life. It's everything. And if I hadn't gone through what I'd been through with the guidance, at some points I didn't even know what I was receiving. I wouldn't have got to where I am now. And it's very difficult to, you saying about thinking you work with these energies, and then you do, and then in the end you kind of don't judge anymore. That's the point I'm getting to. It just all becomes one.
Yes.
And different aspects of, and they come through as and when, because the whole point is we're in service.
Yep. And so very much goes back to what I was saying before, and I'm glad you said that, because I personally feel that I'm at a point now that I can, you know, I'm very focused. My focus is not so much on my spiritual team, even though I'm aware that they're there, but to me they're just energy, and I can call in. And I think as humans we like to put a name and a form and a look, but ultimately what it comes down to is they're an energy, a non-physical energy presence that are there to assist and support us in our service and what we're here to do.
And they are no better or worse than us. I think that's another thing, is there's no worship, there's respect and gratitude. Absolutely. You know, absolutely. Of course, but there's no, you know, people say about angels, and I said, well, yeah, well, they turned up like they did, you know, when Jesus, if it did happen like that, if they turned up and they were these big things with wings and great big men, and the shepherds were, because that is what they needed to see.
Yes. Yes.
Those people in that space. So when people say, I don't believe in angels, you know, people sitting on a cloud with a harp, and I say, ooh, no, to be honest, when I see them, they don't look like that. It's just like, I can't put into words what it is. To me, I see the whole energy. To
Yes.
me, it's just the most amazing, brilliant, pure energy.
Yes.
And everybody sees it differently, you
Yes.
know. So I think that's another thing, to not sort of conceptualize and be open.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Be open.
Yeah. I was just thinking of like a couple of other examples of some not so well known or referenced, let's say, experiences of a guide, and one is when my dog passed away, and I was very, very connected to her soul essence. I knew that we'd had previous incarnations, we'd found each other again. And when she passed away, I was traumatized to the point that I'd lost a child. Um,
Yeah.
but that transmuted very quickly, because I was like, that's just my attachment to her physical form. Her soul essence never goes anywhere. And I remember, you know, only it would have been, you know, less than 24 hours after her transitioning, I was walking along the road with a friend of mine, and I look, and all of a sudden she literally materialized and appeared in front of me, and I, you know, there she is. Um, and as I got closer, obviously she dissipated, and you know, because it's a certain vibration that we connect, we can
Yes.
see in that,
Yeah.
and then if we blink, you know, we kind of drop that vibration or disconnect from that vibration. And I remember my friend saying to me, "Oh, she's here to protect you." And I kid you not, we get to the point where I'd seen her, and I stop and I look up, and there's this massive sign that said 24-hour protection. And I just thought, you know, and they're the
When
beautiful.
things like that happen,
Mm,
then, you know, it's confirmation. I mean, we
yeah,
believe it or we know. We don't have to
yeah,
question it. But
no,
it's I do look back to the times when those sort of things first started happening to me, and I started to notice. And
yeah,
I do remember the wow. You know, you're almost like you're in the middle of a Disney film or something.
right.
And I still appreciate it. I still
Mm,
appreciate it. I have amazing things happen to me all the time. And sometimes you can be with somebody who doesn't get it when these things happen. And
yeah,
you sort of pause for a minute and are you okay? You look at them, you think, shall I? No, let's not go there. But yeah, I do appreciate them still, but and they are wonderful, and I never ever don't appreciate them. But I in a way, I do miss the kind of sort of horror,
mm,
but unbelievable like skepticism I had when it first started.
yeah.
The
I think that's
joy of
normal.
thinking, wow, and also the complete fear that I was losing my marbles. But it was just such an amazing energy reaction. I kind of miss it in a way. And I
Yeah,
love it when people start coming to you. You get it as well, I'm sure. And you kind of, when two vibrations meet like that, very often you can activate somebody else's
yeah, yeah.
awakening process. And when they start getting it, and then you get all the messages, and yeah, and oh, this happened, wow. And I'm like, oh God, thanks for sharing, because I remember all that. It's great.
It is. It's beautiful. I love when I can connect with people and they share those experiences, because it takes me back. You know, it takes me back. And
Yes.
I remember, you know, when and it is, and there is such a magic essence to it. And I think I just want to reiterate, these experiences are happening to every single person all the time. It's just where we're
Yes.
paying our attention to and noticing it, and being aware of
Exactly.
it. Um, and I think one other example that I want to share before we kind of close things up is, you know, the presence of some working with someone else's higher self. So someone who's in physical form, but obviously their soul essence, you know, they have that higher aspect that's in non-physical, or in the process of integrating as we go through our ascension. And I remember the first time, two stories very quickly. I remember the first time when I was practicing my mediumship skills. And I did this reading for a friend of mine's dad. And it was like, because anytime I learned something, I'll practice, 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 and, you know, want to refine my skills always. And I did this reading, and brought through his brother and gave all this really very, very accurate information. And he was sort of blown away, and there was this process of translation because he didn't speak English. And anyway, and at the end of it, then, asked, does that, can you place that? And they were like, yeah, but he's still alive. And that was the first time it blew me away, because I was like, I've just completely read someone, because at that time I didn't think you could read someone that was
No.
still, but this was a very long time ago. Anyway, so that sort of blew my mind. We had these experiences that blow our consciousness out to what is possible. But another thing is I had 2 near-death experiences in a very short space of time. One was almost a fatal car accident. Another one was I was almost I was held by the neck and almost strangled to death. And at those times in my life, and I think, near-death experiences are something that really does activate an awakening, because you get to that point of almost crossing over, and there's a higher energy that comes through you from that point, like adrenaline kicks in. And anyway, at those times, I had literally appeared to me the higher self of what I didn't know back then, but what I know now as my divine counterpart, my twin, appeared to me at both those times that I almost was at that point of death. And I laugh about it now, because it was like his image, his face, almost like in a very kind of godly sense, like almost floating on a cloud, kind of overseeing this. And it completely confused me and bombarded me, because at that point we had met in physical, but I wasn't aware of who he was to me at that point in time. And I was like, why is he appearing to me when I'm in these very critical points in my life, very traumatic? And I'm like, most people see Jesus or an archangel. Why is this guy who I don't really know that well appearing to me? I mean, obviously, in hindsight, with a lot of this stuff, it makes sense, right? In hindsight, it makes sense. But at the time, it just, it didn't make a lot of sense. So I guess just to throw those two in, higher aspects.
Very, very quickly, before we go as well, another thing is, I think, say about energies matching with spirit guides, etc. Anybody who knows me knows that I've got a very good sense of humour, and I do think when things are very funny. And Archangel Michael, I just call him Mike. He's got the most fantastic sense of humour, and he constantly, excuse my French, takes the piss out of me. Like, if I just suddenly get something, I see him going, like, stood there like that, look, going, yeah, thanks for catching up, like stuff like that. So, don't, this is what I think about the people putting it on putting these energies on a pedestal. Don't expect, but expect, if you know what I mean. Anything and anyone is possible who's going to come to you. And just you imagine it's going to be this, that, or the other, Jesus, etc. at certain times. I think when we realise that they have their own energy, which we are attracting and interacting with, then it's got to be something relatable. And all things in life, especially with the spiritual path, you've got to have a sense of humour. That's a good thing to end on.
100%, or else we really will lose our marbles.
Yeah, definitely. So they've all got a sense of humour too.
So before we wrap it up, I guess probably some, practical applications of how to connect to spirit guide, and also to better understand soul contracts. So any sort of recommendations or guidance that you would sort of suggest to people?
For example, when El Maria turned up and I was seeing that guy in my meditations, I've had other friends say to me, oh, I kept seeing something at the corner of my eye, or I kept seeing this picture, or I didn't know what it was. again, don't, what's the word? It's not don't expect. I'm just trying to think. Don't think, well, Mary Magdalene, I like her. She's brilliant. She could well be my spirit guide. They kind of find you.
Yeah.
And you have to be in that position. So being open,
Right.
meditating. Like him, I didn't know that's who he was. And he'd been in my meditations for quite a long time, you know? So I think it's not having preconceived ideas.
Yes.
Relaxing into it. You know, some people have loads of them turn up all at the same time. Some people, like me, it's taken me a long time. Archangel Michael was with me for ages before I realized, you know, and I was kind of in contact before anybody else started to show up, but it all happens at the right time. And again, I think as well, to be as open as you can. Meditation. Definitely.
I think one thing that comes into my mind is that, you know, they're all just expressions of energy and frequency, and sometimes it's about us attuning to that frequency to be able to meet and connect.
Turning the dial on your vibe.
Yeah, because it's always there, it's always accessible. It's just about having the open mind, the open heart, the intention to be able to connect. And
intention. I'm ready, I'm open, I'd like to find out if you would like to connect with me. I need some help with this. That's very often what it is. They're only a breath or a veil away. And they're waiting for you to say, I need help with this. But another thing is, which I learned, and I'm sure a lot of people have, it's not going to be like, yeah, I could really do with 100 quid at the moment. So if you could sort of guide me in that direction, they're going to guide you where you need to go. They will help you. They will support you. But if it's not for your greater good, it's a bit like manifestation and stuff like that. You can keep slamming your head against the brick wall. But then you have to tune into yourself too. And as soon as you start tuning into yourself, and those two things happen, so they're helping you, you're taking your own inner compass advice, then that's when all the magic starts to happen.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kathy, for joining in this conversation. I'm sure this will be the beginning of many others, and thank you everyone for watching, subscribing, following. You know, just love the soul tribe that's interconnected with obviously the Blue Butterfly as well, and Kathy's amazing work. So love to hear in the comments if there's experiences that you'd like to share. Love to read them, love to hear about them. If you have any questions or suggestions for other topics that you would like to hear about, please feel free to place them in the comment section below as well. So if you would like to connect with myself or Kathy to book a one-on-one session to help you through some of these topics or anything else, I will also put in the description box below links to how you can get in contact with us and go about doing that. So thank you once again, Kathy. It's been an absolute pleasure having this conversation with you. I look forward to many others, and thank you all for watching and tuning in.
Thank you. It's been lovely.
All right. Thank you. Bye, everyone.